So hello again, and thank you for joining today's webinar. It's on using data to support your FAFSA completion campaign. My name is May Whiting, and I am the Data and Research Manager at Alabama Possible. We also have Ron Leonard from the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, or AIC, on Zoom with us. And today we're going to discuss the importance of using data to promote FAFSA completion in your community. As always, we would like to recognize and thank our sponsors for supporting this work and making this training opportunity possible. And we really appreciate our great partners, including the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. Just a few quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Please keep your microphones on mute at all times, just so we can avoid any feedback during the presentation. This webinar will be posted to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/AlabamaPossible. Throughout today's webinar, you can submit questions using the chat feature. And then we will also make sure to answer the questions that you submitted when you registered for this training. A brief reminder that you can find us on several social media platforms at AL Goes to College. That's the number 2. So feel free to tag us on any of those platforms. Now, high schools who are joining us on the webinar today, you can still sign up for the Alabama Goes to College campaign. That can be done at alabamapossible.org/register 2021-22. If you're an educator on the call, you're likely already a part of this campaign, but just in case you're a part of a school that hasn't yet registered, this is the link, and we do only need one representative from each school to complete the form. So if you're new to the Alabama Goes to College campaign, it is a statewide effort that includes the 3 different components you see here. Today, we're really going to focus on that top component, Cash for College, which builds awareness around financial aid for post-secondary education. So we, of course, know that paying for college is a really common concern for students and families who are thinking about education after high school. And completing the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, is a key step in paying for and affording college. As you all know, this task is also now a part of the high school graduation checklist. So our goal with Cash for College is for every graduating senior to complete their FAFSA long before high school graduation. That way they can access this really critical federal, state, and institutional aid. So our learning objectives for today's webinar. We hope by the end of it, you gain confidence with navigating and using data platforms to monitor and promote FAFSA completion. And then we also hope that you're able to identify one new strategy you will incorporate into your FAFSA completion campaign. So just before we review the data platforms, I want to provide a little bit of context. So we all know that completing the FAFSA is important. That's why we're here today. And we know that the FAFSA gives students access to the largest source of financial aid for both certificates and degrees. So when students complete the FAFSA, they'll become aware of what aid they're eligible for. And we really hope that this allows them to make more informed decisions about their next steps, especially for those students who might have ruled out college based on cost alone. So really quickly, we want to take a look at last year. So in Alabama, for the class of 2021, they hovered below 50% completion by the time of their graduation month. And that did get a little bit closer to 60% by the end of the FAFSA cycle. But having around 40% of high school seniors not completing a FAFSA is especially significant in our state because around 57% of Alabama students are eligible for Pell Grant aid. And students can only access this aid if they are completing their FAFSA. So we want to acknowledge that so many of y'all have been diligent in promoting FAFSA completion long before it became a high school graduation requirement. But we also recognize that in 2021, we were facing a ton of challenges, the pandemic included. So we know that's certainly influencing the results that we see on the screen here. That being said, looking at 2022, with this increased focus on FAFSA completion, Alabama has made huge and significant strides. So Alabama is currently ranked second in the nation in year-over-year percentage change. So on the left, you see that Alabama's year-over-year increase, that orange line, is much higher than the national year-over-year change, that blue line. So we've seen huge improvements from last year. On the right of the screen, you can see that our rate of completion in Alabama is basically matching the national rate. We're currently ranked 24th in the nation in completion. So for the state as a whole, this is pretty encouraging. Now, we're especially pleased to see greater positive year-over-year increases in FAFSA completion for schools that have higher concentrations of students of color, as well as higher concentrations of low-income students. We're also seeing greater positive year-over-year increases in FAFSA completion for rural geographies. So this is really good news for closing some of the equity gaps that consistently exist in post-secondary education. That being said, this is just kind of a statewide view. We know that not all schools and all districts are having the same experiences of promoting the FAFSA, and we know there are barriers that some schools face that other schools might not. So while the state as a whole is showing really positive trends, we know that individual cities and individual counties might be facing some serious obstacles, both with college-going activities generally and with FAFSA completion specifically. So we want to show two tools today that will hopefully make your lives a little bit easier, just knowing that tracking and monitoring FAFSA completion data is really key to any FAFSA completion campaign. And we emphasize this because it gives you so many opportunities, not only to assess the progress of your efforts so far, but also to kind of adjust and tweak your strategies for future activities. And that would allow you to really intentionally reach out to those students who haven't yet finished the task. So we're going to start by looking at our Cash for College data dashboard. I'm going to pull that up right now and share my screen. Let's see. Okay, so here is our dashboard. I'm just going to give it a quick refresh. So this can be found at alabamapossible.org/dashboard. And on the dashboard, you're able to access school-wide data. This dashboard is updated weekly throughout the FAFSA cycle, so from October 1st through June. And it's a great way of seeing how your campaign is progressing. So as you can see on this first page, we have our state overview. And so on our state overview, we are provided with the total number of FAFSAs completed, the 12th grade enrollment in our state. And so when we divide FAFSA completions by total enrollment, we get our completion percentage. Like I mentioned, this dashboard is updated weekly. So this data is current as of January 21st, 2022. And that is the most recent data release from the US Department of Education. And so using all of that data from this year, we can compare to last year's data around the same time. So from January 22nd, 2021. And you can see that the completion percentage this year is a little bit higher than the completion percentage last year. In this third column, you can see the improvement. So we have had an increase of 15.97%. And then we have this pie chart over here. It shows the number of completed FAFSAs, incomplete FAFSAs, and missing FAFSAs. And so just let me explain the difference between incomplete and missing. So incomplete, that is going to be the FAFSAs that have been submitted to federal student aid, but are not yet considered complete. So they've been started and submitted, but have been either rejected or been considered incomplete for some reason. Whereas missing is the number of students in the state who have not even started a FAFSA. And then of course we have our green section, and that's the number of completed FAFSAs. So all of those FAFSAs are 100% done. Now, if we go down to the very bottom, we have our weekly progress bar. The green bar is going to represent this year's FAFSA completion, and the gray bar represents last year's FAFSA completion. Again, this will update week to week, so you should see that green bar moving forward. Now, if we go back up to the top of the dashboard, we see we have more tabs up top. So we're going to go to our by school tab. This is where we will be able to see data by school, and you can search by school name, city, county, school size, district, whether or not the school is participating in Cash for College, and then by low income rate. So just want to point out really quickly for school size, we consider small schools to be schools that have 1 to 99 seniors, medium schools to be schools that have 100 to 199 seniors, and then we consider large schools to be schools with 200 plus seniors. And this is how we determine our end of year awards. So schools are only competing against schools of similar size. So if you're interested in tracking your school compared to schools of a similar size, you can use this drop down. And I just want to give a quick reminder that our awards are based on FAFSA completion through May 1st. So that applies to our end of year MVP award, as well as our end of year most improved award. So on this tab, again, you're able to see lots of different ways to search. And that's pretty similar in our by district and county tab. But the tab that I really would like to emphasize is the school detail tab. And on this school detail tab, you are able to see individual schools. So right now we're looking at Ramsey High School, but you can click this drop down and type in your school's name and then click it once you find it. So right now we'll take a look at Saraland High School. You'll see that this year their FAFSA completion is at 58.2%. That's compared to last year's FAFSA completion of 35.2%, which means they have an improvement rate of 65.1%. In our pie chart, we see 167 FAFSAs have been completed, the green part right here. 14 FAFSAs have been started and submitted, but are not complete, which leaves 106 FAFSAs that have not even been started at all. So this is showing an individual school. I think this page is really useful, especially for the beginning of the year when you are goal setting. You can look at the progress bar from last year to kind of give you an idea of what targets you want to hit week to week or month to month. And then you can just continue to monitor your progress throughout the year. So this is our Cash for College data dashboard. Again, It's showing school-wide data. It allows you to compare your school to other schools or your district to other districts. And then you can also use it to check your position for the Cash for College End of Year Awards. And before I turn it over to Ron, I just wanted to note quickly, our dashboard does work differently from the portal that Ron is about to show you. Again, our dashboard is updated weekly, and it's updated with publicly available data from the US Department of Education. Ron will be describing the way that AIC obtains FAFSA data and then matches it to the students who are enrolled at your school.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ron Leonard. I'm the Director of Special Initiatives at the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, AIC, as it's commonly referred to as. And for the next few minutes, we're going to share some information with you about what we call the FAFSA Completion Portal. So let's begin with what it is. Well, the portal is a web tool for educators, and it shows which students have and have not completed the FAFSA. It is available at fafsa.aic.edu, and it's available to any school district, both public and private, in the state of Alabama that signs a use agreement with AIC. It is freely available. Once again, all you have to do is sign that agreement, either the superintendent of the district or the headmaster of a private school. Next slide, please. Here's an illustration of how the process works. As you can see over on the left, the student will submit the FAFSA. 9 times out of 10, the student's going to be doing it electronically. That will go to a database at the US Department of Education. We download the information from the federal government, and we also get information from the Alabama State Department of Education. That goes on one server. Now, we match the data. So as long as the data matches, then we can move those records, those student records, into another server after removing personal ID, insofar as social security number, date of birth, etc. Now, over on the right, there are some additional steps that will be incorporated in the new release of the portal. I'll just give you a quick overview. The portal's been around for a number of years, and previously it worked on software that the Colorado Department of Higher Ed developed and about half of the states use. That is legacy software. So what AIC has done is we're working with consultants and we're working with Oracle. We have just, as of this past Friday, built a brand new platform. Now, a lot of the pages look very similar or identical to what was there in the past, but it is a brand new platform, and a lot of additional resources are coming down the pike. So just stay tuned. We'll tell you more about those momentarily. So as you can see, there is the capability of generating reports to our educators. There's also the capability of generating more specific information to our students, specifically errors that they've made on their FAFSA. And then that goes back to the student. He or she can correct those errors and the process begins again. Now, there's multiple levels of access. There's even a public view. If you go to that URL I just shared with you, fafsa.aic.edu, the general public can see how school districts are doing as well as how schools are doing. And there's a number of nice visuals that they can use. However, only those educators whose superintendent has signed a use agreement with AIC, and when the superintendent signs that agreement, he, she, or someone at the board will designate who can have access to the portal. And then we set them up with accounts whereby they will get everything that the public can view plus the student data, which we'll show you momentarily. The next step up is what we call local access managers. Not only can they see the student data, but they can also create accounts. They can add accounts, they can delete accounts as needed. When we set the accounts up for a district, we gave each district the option of creating 2 local access managers. And we wanted to do it that way to give the district the flexibility of creating new accounts as needed. If you're not sure whether you're just a high school user or a local access manager, momentarily I'll show you how you can differentiate between those. And then at the AIC level, we have access to everything. Next slide, please. All right, I shared with you the URL. There it is once again. Here is the home page. And on this page, you'll see nice visuals. We're adding a lot of visuals throughout the website. We have more statistical information. For example, whether you go to students and families or educators, we've got the same information there. It's in slightly different places though. We have added a nice little kind of electronic booklet which talks about the different types of state aid. You may not be aware, but there are a lot of different state programs. So that's certainly something that you as educators, career coaches, counselors want to take a look at, as well as the students and the students' parents. You'll also find that we provided a link to a directory of the institutions of our public 2- and 4-year institutions, where students and their families, as well as even educators like you, can drill down and get specific information about the institution. So more and more information is being made available directly on the homepage. Next slide, please. All right, I mentioned to you a minute ago, the way you can tell you're actually in the portal and you have access to student data is you'll see a little link across the top, student detail. And there is where you will go to do the majority of your work. And we'll talk more about that momentarily. Now, the local access manager has not only that link to student detail, but he or she will also see a link to administration. And that's where one goes to actually create, or if need be, delete accounts. All right, I'm going to show you just a few slides that have information available to everyone. Now, if you go to the public access view, that is, if you go to the home page, there is a link, data. And if you select that data link, you can get nice visuals as well as results per district. If you look down that first screen capture, there's an alphabetized listing of the different school districts in the state. So you can see how many FAFSAs have been submitted, how many have been completed, the percentage, and so forth. There's also the capability on that same page to search. I don't know if you can see it or not, but right beneath data details, if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see district name, and next to that, you'll see school name. And there you can search by your district, or you can search by the school to see how either the district or the school is doing. Now, there's also a link to the district map. If you will, right under public access view, scroll over, you can show where data is and where the district map is, if you don't mind. So if you click district map, then very good, thanks. You'll get this visual representation. And this is updated every time we refresh the portal. Incidentally, you can see the date when we last updated the portal on the home page, and we did it just as of yesterday. And then beneath that visual, you'll see once again a listing of all the school districts where you could easily scroll to your district to see how it's doing. All right, there's also current rankings available from the data link. If you go to data, which is across the top, and then you will have the option of going to current rankings, which is right beneath the login, the kind of orange login button that you see there. And then if you click current rankings, you can see a nice visual for the highest scoring districts in the state. And then beneath that, You can also see the highest performing schools in the state. I don't know if you can see it too well, but on each visual right in the center, there's kind of a line where it shows you the state average. Now, there's also the capability of searching by district and searching by school. So if you search by district, for example, you'll get a listing of the schools in your district. I believe we're still limiting it to maybe 10 schools within the district. But if you don't see your school there, you could certainly search by the school name and see how your school is doing. All right, let's take a minute to talk about how to log in. I mentioned a minute ago that little login button in the upper right-hand corner. That's available on the home page. If you click it, then you'll be prompted for your username and password. And there's a couple of different ways that we create usernames and passwords. As I mentioned to you, when the superintendent submitted the use agreement, he or she could designate which educators would have access to the portal. So we created accounts at that time. One of the access levels is local access manager. So once we create accounts for a local access manager, he or she can create accounts for additional educators within one's district. So 9 times out of 10, the username is going to be someone's work email address. And then at 8, we will generate the password. And if the local access manager is creating the password or creating a new account, he or she will obviously create the password. So once that has been done and you click login, you will be taken to the view that shows student detail. And if you scroll over student detail, it's going to take you to the most current FAFSA year. The 22-23 FAFSA year is the most current year. Next slide, please. All right. Now, if you, from the student detail page, you have the option of searching in a number of different ways. For example, in this example, I'm searching by Mobile, and I'm searching for Mary G. Montgomery High School. Now, one caveat about the portal is it indexes the full name. So if you were to search by Montgomery, it might not come up. So just remember, when you're searching by school name, search by the entire school name. If for some reason you can't locate it, you can always just search by the district and just scroll through until you come to it. And then, as you can see, down across the bottom, there's a couple of blue bars there. Those blue bars are there because this was an actual screen capture of a search that I did. So we're just concealing the student names. But I mentioned to you earlier, when we get data from the federal government and from ALSTE, it has personal identifying information in some cases. For example, the Social Security number. So we remove that before we move the data to the FAFSA server. So all you see is the student's first name and last name, not date of birth, not Social Security number. Now, some of the important columns there, completed FAFSA, that is for both completed and incomplete. Now, you'll notice there by completed FAFSA, there's a little information icon. If you scroll over that in the live version, you can get information about incomplete FAFSAs. FAFSA detail, there's where you will go to see the error messages. We show the most common error messages, which are the student hasn't signed the web version, student hasn't signed the print version, the parent hasn't signed the web version. And then over that last column, verification, that's not as important as it has been in the past. I know that the Department of Education has relaxed its requirements for verification. May correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're just, they're only verifying now if they think there may be fraud involved. I know there was a change just recently. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's definitely how it was, especially during the early parts of the pandemic. And because of the progress they saw from that measure, I think they're reconsidering verification as a whole so that a much smaller percentage of students are selected for verification each year, which is great news.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because many of you are probably aware in the past when the student had to provide additional documentation, that was just an extra hurdle. And I've heard from all types of people, even college professors, helping their students complete the FAFSA. It can be difficult. So if it's difficult and you've got a parent who's trying to, help the kid and holding down 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, they may get frustrated and just give up. So I think if for some reason the feds change and go back to more verification, that's a clue to you that you may need to do a little bit more hand holding. But it sounds like there's going to be less of emphasis on verification in the future. So I agree with May. That's good news to hear. Next slide, please. All right, here what I've done is once again, I searched Mobile District, I searched Mary G. Washington High School, and I am searching by complete. Now, the FAFSA status search has a number of different ways to search incomplete. The caveat about the incomplete searches is you would have to go through each one to make sure that the student hadn't made multiple errors. So instead of going through each one, I suggest if you're going to use the FAFSA status, just search by complete. And then once you know who is complete, you can easily talk to those students who haven't finished the FAFSA. Next slide, please. All right, just want to share some important information. Now, as I mentioned to you, some of the views look just like the old portal, but some of the views are the new platform. We will be replacing more of the views in time as we make additional changes. We are currently trying to provide daily updates. We had the original goal of yesterday. We did update it yesterday, but we're not making daily updates quite yet. We're making a lot of progress. We'll get there soon. We're also going to be generating what we call letters, or actually emails to the student. There are 4 types. Right? The no FAFSA, the student hasn't done anything. The incomplete, and the plan is for the incomplete email to identify the specific types of errors. There's going to be 2 versions of the complete email or letter, one for students outside of Metro Birmingham and one for students in Metro or in the city of Birmingham, because we'll have a little nudge for them to reach out to Birmingham Promise. We want them to certainly take advantage of that opportunity. So that's the difference between the regular complete letter or email and the Birmingham Promise complete. Now, there are just a couple of things I want to mention to you. As I mentioned earlier, when we get data from the federal government and from ALSDE, we remove personal identifying information before we move it to the FAFSA server. Also, keep in mind there could be multiple eras, and with the old platform, it would just go to the first era. Now, with the new platform, we should be able to identify all the potential errors that the student makes. Also, under FAFSA status, no match, those are the students that haven't even started the FAFSA. Next slide, please. Now, sometimes students don't show up in the portal, and 9 times out of 10, it's because they haven't provided ALSDE with their social security number. Now, in time, we're going to have a secondary match. When I say that, for student data to go into the portal, we have to be able to match what the federal government provides to us with what the State Department of Education provides to us. So if, for example, the student doesn't provide one social security number, then their information won't go into the portal. So I get emails, I get calls, and it's usually because of that. Now we're going to go to a secondary match. We're not quite there yet, but we're going to go to a secondary match, which won't rely, where if the student hasn't provided one social security number. Then the secondary match will be date of birth, zip code, and one's first name. So that should help resolve this situation. Now, if students aren't in the portal for some reason at all, if you will send to us in an encrypted email, and we can tell you how to do that, the different data fields that you see there, school district, school name, student's last name, first name, date of birth, social security number, we can add those students to the portal. If you ever run into that situation, either reach out to Ms. Ross or me, and we can help you in that respect. And if you ever need assistance, by all means, feel free to reach out to us here at either to drop me an email or to give me a call.
And Ron, since we received several questions regarding students missing from the portal, I figured I'd go ahead and raise those here while we're on this slide.
Okay.
So the appropriate action for educators is to provide all of these fields to AIC in an encrypted email.
If they're not there at all, if they're not showing
Right.
up at all. Now, if they're there, but their status is, the student says one thing and the status that we show is another, it could be because they haven't provided their social security number.
Right.
So I can certainly ask IT here at AIC to investigate it, but usually that's the reason. But as I said, when we do ultimately go to that backup match, where we use, where we're not just depending on social security number, where we search by date of birth and first name and zip code, that should help resolve the situation. But as I said, if they're not showing up at all, then we will need all those data fields that I just mentioned to you. And we do ask that you send them in an encrypted email. We don't want that kind of personal identification information to be out in cyberspace. That's why we ask that they be protected.
And would this apply to schools where students have either moved into the school or moved out of the school? If they've just recently moved in, an educator would need to provide this information to y'all. Is that correct?
If they're not showing up at all, now they may want to, until we do daily updates, there may be a little time between when we did the last update and when the student actually completed the FAFSA. So be mindful of the date when we last updated the portal. And we've gone back to adding that date on the homepage.
And then a little bit more of a rare scenario, but for the educators who live on the state border, so they have students who are attending high school within Alabama, but then residing in a different state like Mississippi, you were mentioning that those students might not be coming through the federal data that AIC receives.
Right, we're just getting Alabama students from the federal government. That is, we're just getting student data for students in Alabama from the federal government. That's how the memorandum of understanding is set up, or how it's structured, you might say.
So for educators who this applies to, in that case, when y'all are reviewing all of your data in the AIC portal, if you're just reviewing on the web page or if you're exporting that information into a spreadsheet, I would recommend just making a note for the students who do reside out of state that you're likely not going to see their FAFSA completion data pull through. And it's not to worry, you can still check with them a number of ways to see if they've actually completed the task. You can ask them to screenshot their federal student aid account where it shows that their FAFSA has been both submitted and processed fully. So there are ways for you to feel comfortable that they have completed that task. Just know there are some very specific scenarios where you might not find all of the data you'd like to see in the AIC portal. But thank you, Ron, for that extra information.
You're welcome. We have all the students of all the public institutions in the state of Alabama in the portal for the most part. Now, there are, and the vast majority of the school districts, public school districts, have signed use agreements with us. There's just a handful of schools that haven't signed use agreements with us. But once again, for educators to be able to access the portal, the superintendent or the headmaster of a private school would have to sign the use agreement with us. And then the school district designates who can have access to the portal. One of those access levels is the local access manager. Once I create an account for a local access manager, he or she can create accounts for one's fellow educators within the district. So that's how the process works. So hypothetical situation, new educator in a district. Let's say for some reason, the local access manager can't create the account. He or she can contact us here at AIC and we'll create the account, or the superintendent can contact us at AIC and we can create the account if they can't create it. Okay,
And
next.
just a few related questions that I'm seeing. So in terms of students moving into a school, they might have to be added by sending an email with those details that have been requested. For students who are in the middle of a year being promoted from 11th grade to 12th grade, is that also the same? Is that the appropriate action to email all those fields?
I would need to check with IT about that.
Okay.
I would need to check with IT. If a student is going from the 11th grade to 12th grade, I would need to verify how the process would work.
Okay. And we have a few people who mentioned that they're looking at the student detail tab right now while they're logged in, and they're getting a no data found message. So it might just be a technical glitch with the portal right now.
That does sound like a technical glitch.
Okay. So hopefully that gets resolved for y'all. We know there was just an update this week, so hopefully it's just a tech thing that will be resolved shortly. But thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we'll continue to monitor.
Yeah, we experienced a couple little hiccups when we moved to the new platform on Friday. Anytime something looks unusual, by all means, feel free to, my email address will pop up in a minute. We have a generic FAFSA email address, which will pop up in a minute. Anytime you see something like that, by all means, feel free to drop me an email. I'll alert IT and then they can investigate the situation. All right, so I've shared a little bit with you about the migration to the new platform. We're going to continue to make enhancements to it. There's going to be additional reporting capability. We're currently in that first phase. We're launching into the second phase. There's going to be additional reporting capability. We're going to be adding a lot more information, more visuals, etc. It will probably be late March or later before we do complete everything. But good things are coming down the pike. So stay tuned. And as I said, if you do see something unusual, by all means, certainly bring it to our attention and I'll reach out to IT and ask them to take a look at it. All right, I've got a few extra slides that I just shared with May, and I thought I would throw in a little extra information for those of you who are local access managers. Remember, they're the individuals who not only can see the students, but they can create accounts as well. The local access managers can see all the students' data, all the students in all the schools in the district, and then they can add and delete accounts as needed. Remember, they will have that extra link across the top when they log in, that administration link. And when they click on it, one of the options is manage users. And if they go to the manage users page, then they will see create new user about in the center of the page. If you click on it, then you'll be able to create an account for an individual. As I mentioned before, the username, you'll want to most likely use the person's work email address. Create a unique password. I suggest entering maybe 8 characters, upper and lowercase letters, numerals, and maybe a unique symbol like an asterisk. or a dollar sign. You'll want to type it a second time to make sure it's entered correctly. And then the one option that the local access manager can do for role is authorized user. Now, in many cases, an authorized user will have access to maybe just one high school, but you can also set individuals up for district-wide access. Otherwise, give them access to all the schools in the district. And then everything else is pretty self-explanatory, first name, last name, etc. District, that's where you'll get that drop-down menu and you can select the schools. And of course, you want to save your results. All right, there's my contact information. There's the generic FAFSA address. So as I said, if you come across anything that looks unusual, if you have questions about the portal, by all means, feel free to drop me an email or you can give me a call. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time today.
All right, thank you, Ron, for answering all of our questions and for giving us the exciting updates that are coming. We've gotten a lot of questions in the chat that we've already addressed. If you have any outstanding questions, please feel free to add those so we can address them before the end of today's webinar. But we just want to quickly go over one question that we received about the Cash for College data dashboard. Someone asked, what was the window of monitoring progress for completion again? So when you first get on the Cash for College data dashboard, you'll be met with a state overview tab, and that will allow you to monitor progress for completion at the statewide level. When you go to the school detail tab, that is when you can actually look at your individual school's progress. Both of those tabs will have the progress bar that shows you kind of the week-to-week progress for either the state or your school. So I hope that answers your question. We also have a question related to students who are completing a non-participation waiver. And so if students have completed a waiver, the question is whether that will be reflected in the AIC portal or not. And I know that we don't yet have an answer, Ron, but if you want to, we will be following up with everyone about it. For right now, what's important is that y'all are supporting the students who are eligible for federal aid in the task of completing the FAFSA. For those students who are not eligible for federal aid and need to complete a waiver, go ahead and complete the waiver with them. Hold on to that waiver so that we can give you further instructions on what to do with it and what's the appropriate action. And I think as of right now, we're still figuring out how that will be reflected in the portal, if at all.
I'm not sure it will be displayed in the portal, but if I hear otherwise, I will let you know, and then you can let today's attendees, all your members, know that information.
We've received a lot of questions about where to submit the waiver and what date it is due by. As soon as we have concrete details related to the waiver, we will certainly pass them along. So I see all of y'all's questions about calendar dates and timing with graduation, and we'll definitely follow up as soon as we have more information. So in terms of resources available to y'all, of course, the two platforms that we just reviewed, y'all can access at any time. Feel free to send us your questions if you have any about those platforms. We also just wanted to make you aware that as you are promoting the FAFSA, you can utilize the email templates, the social media graphics, and the flyers that are found in the Alabama Goes to College Educators Toolkit. This toolkit is housed on Google Drive, and all of our FAFSA-related resources can be found in the Cash for College subfolder of that toolkit. Of course, we also highly recommend FAFSA.gov, as well as Federal Student Aid's Financial Aid Toolkit. Those are both excellent sources of very rich and detailed information. Just want to plug a couple things in case you missed them, or if you're just wanting a refresher. Our Cash for College FAFSA 101 and Advanced FAFSA trainings are available on our YouTube channel, accessible at any time. And then we also have a step-by-step FAFSA walkthrough of the web version of the FAFSA. So we created this specifically for Alabama high school seniors. And then because we've heard from so many of you that your students are actually using the mobile version of the FAFSA, we have also linked a walkthrough of the FAFSA on the My Student Aid app. So that could be really helpful if you're getting more students to complete through the app version. Of course, at any time, if y'all have questions or scenarios that you absolutely cannot figure out, don't hesitate to contact our help desk by texting or calling 334-316-6155. Students and families can also contact us through this number. We're happy to answer any and all financial aid questions they might have. We hope that today has been helpful for you. We'd be really grateful if you participate in the brief survey that will be sent out to you through our follow-up email. You should receive that in the next few days. It will give you an opportunity to input your contact information so that we can follow up with you. So if you'd like to provide your name and your email address so we can follow up with specific issues, that would be much appreciated. But just in general, your feedback is really helpful for us to understand how we can continuously improve. Don't forget, if you're a high school educator joining us today, you can receive professional development hours for this by using course number 277444 and section number 426543 on PowerSchool. We appreciate that you spent your time with us today, so we definitely want you to get credit for that. And then lastly, we'd love if you stay connected. You can do that through our website, alabamagoestocollege.org, or you can email us at algoestocollege@alabamapossible.org. I'm just going to quickly check to see if we received any further questions. But again, if we haven't addressed something that you're experiencing an issue with, please just include your name and your email address in that survey that goes out in the follow-up email. But I am not seeing any other questions. So we'll go ahead and just thank you for your time today. Thank you, Ron, for joining us and showing us all of the exciting updates that are happening with the AIC portal. We hope y'all have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.